Leading the Nightline tonight, Malaysia's neutral policy has helped strengthen the country's position as the main choice for global investment. Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim says the stance has allowed the country to maintain good relationships with main trading partners despite facing uncertainties for global supply chain.
Anwar says a strong diplomatic foundation has allowed the country's main companies, including those in the defence sector, to position themselves in the global market.
Malaysia has a policy of active non-alignment, or we in ASEAN says centrality, engaging with all parties, notwithstanding their ideological differences and major policy shifts. And that has allowed us to engage confidently with all countries.
According to Anwar, Malaysia has also recorded the highest bond inflows within 10 months, exceeding $2 billion in the past few weeks, in spite of the uncertain global geopolitics that has sparked pressure on global stock markets. He says this development reflects the global investors' confidence towards Malaysia's economy, especially through the manufacturing, semiconductor and aerospace sectors. The country's economic resilience is also strengthened by the ringgit's status as Asia's best-performing currency for 2 consecutive years, alongside the 5.2% economic growth last year.
Malaysia's trade recorded a strong performance in the first quarter 2026, with a 10.4% increase to nearly 790 billion ringgit, even in the face of global uncertainty. Exports grew 12.7% to over 426 billion ringgit, while imports grew 7.7% to over 363 billion ringgit, producing a trade surplus of 63.22 billion ringgit, a record high for the first quarter. The Ministry of Investment, Trade and Industry announced export growth was driven mainly by electrical and electronic products, as well as optical, scientific and mining goods. Strong demand from key markets such as China, the US and Taiwan continued to contribute to the increase. For March 2026, trade increased 9.3% to nearly 273 billion ringgit, with the 71st consecutive month of trade surplus since May 2020. However, the outlook remained cautious following global geopolitical tensions and moderate world trade growth expectations. Therefore, Malaysia is advised to continue to benefit from free trade agreements and explore new markets to maintain economic resilience. Good news for history lovers and curious visitors tonight as a brand new attraction opening its doors tomorrow. The Brooke Dockyard Industrial Heritage Museum will officially welcome the public on Tuesday, April 21. Premier Sarawak Datuk Dan Sri Abang Jori Tunabeng, in its launching earlier tonight, described it as a historic shipyard, telling the story of steam engines, trade and even ships that help Malaysia. Meanwhile, Sarawak Minister for Tourism, Creative Industry and Performing Arts, Datuk Sri Abdul Karim Rahman Hamzah, said the unveil is set to become a key highlight for heritage and history tourism in the city. The Brooke Dockyard, as it was originally known, dates all the way back to 1912, during the time of Charles Brooke holding its distinction of being the very first shipyard established in Borneo and Malaysia. The new museum is also expected to complement other popular attractions like the Borneo Cultures Museum and the Sarawak Cultural Village, giving visitors even more reasons to explore the state's rich heritage. The Gabungan Party Sarawak GPS Convention 2026 sets a clear direction for Sarawak's future, shifting toward a new economy powered by technology, innovation and high-value industries. However, as this vision takes shape, infrastructure remains a critical enabler. Sarawak United People's Party SUPP Deputy Secretary General Datuk Lokia Chiang says progress is being made, but development must accelerate in a more targeted and strategic push.
regarding whether our current pace of infrastructure development is sufficient to support Sarawak's push into new economic sector, I must say that we are making strong and measurable progress. But we must continue to accelerate it in a targeted and strategic manner.
When contacted by TVS, he added continuity and stability under the GPS government have allowed long-term infrastructure projects to be delivered consistently.
This is very important. It's not an overnight affair. Things doesn't happen overnight where you cannot build roads, you cannot plan airports overnight. So it's a very long-term.
Right, we are now with one of the country's top global macroeconomists, Shan Said from Juwai IQI, on his thoughts. Now, Shan, tension at the Strait of Hormuz, shifting attention to other choke points like the Strait of Malacca. Now, does increased traffic make the Strait of Malacca more vulnerable? What risk could emerge?
As the stress and Strait of Malacca builds up, the markets is prepared to see the concentration risk. Malaysia is no longer a passive observer. It is structurally embedded into it, geographically, institutionally, and economically. And if you see, Strait of Malacca facilitates 24 million barrels per day of oil flows versus 20 million with Strait of Malacca. So that clearly indicates that geographically speaking, Malaysia has got a strategic edge and it can leverage from it in terms of economic value. Yes, you're absolutely right when it comes to the high congestion in Strait of Malacca. It increases the freight cost, it increases the congestion, and moreover, it builds the economic cost for these. However, having said that, Malaysia can leverage from its geographical significance, and that gives Malaysia a real advantage. In these current challenging times, Malaysia is not a proximity alone. It has got a deep integration into ports, into facilities, and the energy infrastructure that can sustain the global and regional trade moving forward.
Right, Shan, and also touching on global as well. Global supply chain adjust to energy risk. Now, this is rotating towards economy less exposed to oil import, which you mentioned. Now, which ASEAN economy is at the best positioned to benefit from this shift, and which is the most exposed right now?
Cheryl, if you see right now, the current ASEAN region is going through energy security, regional trade, and global trade balances. And above all, it is going through the fuel landscape that is changing dramatically. And that boils down to policy credibility that will drive the macro outcomes for many economies. However, the macro outcomes may not be same for all the economies. Analyzing Malaysia, Malaysia has got a unique macro architecture, which is a combination of buffer and flexibility. It's a unique amalgamation of buffer and flexibility, having a GDP growth of 5.2%, strong domestic demand. You have trade that is moving at a very fast pace, inflation under 1.4%. So that gives Malaysia a strong sovereign macro fundamentals and macroeconomic stability, which has become the hallmark of growth outlook for Malaysia. not only last year, but also for this year. However, having said that, there will be few economies that will be facing some challenges. They will be facing few shocks when it comes to fuel shock, when it comes to fiscal side, when it comes to freight, when it comes to external trade balances shock, and above all, the currency devaluation shock. So the resilience, the economic resilience, is no longer assumed. It is differentiated and it is priced in real times. So some economies, like already reported in global media, like Philippines and Thailand, will be facing some challenges moving forward in ASEAN.
Yeah, since you're on the topic of the nation as well, Sean, the Malaysia plan was built on a stable global environment. Now that external demand is weakening and the logistic cost is rising. Now, this is exposing the fragility of the Malaysia export-led model. What is your take? Does this crisis reveal a structural weakness in Malaysia model, Sean?
On the contrary, Cheryl, if you see, Malaysia has really built up its economic model and it is shaping up well. You have the domestic demand that is making strong resilience as compared to external cycles. Then you have the export mix, which comprises of a semiconductor, E&E, and that is again a strong signal to the market that Malaysia is not dependent on one single variable when it comes to export mix. And the third, which is the external earning, Malaysia is moving heavily into data center and digital infrastructure. So that is creating a new form of revenues for Malaysia. So to say that the economic model, the export-driven economic model is not working, however, on the contrary, it is Malaysia is moving into a diversified mix of export landscape that is going to refigure the economic outlook of the country in the next 3 to 5 years.
All right. Thank you so much, Sean, for joining us on TVS Nightline. On to other global affairs. Iran's first Vice President Mohammad Reza Aref earlier posted out a warning that the security of the Strait of Hormuz cannot be guaranteed. In a post on X, Aref said that the world can't expect free security while at the same time restricting Iran's oil exports.
According to the post, he said the world needs to make a clear choice between a free oil market for all or significant costs for everyone. He also said stability in global fuel prices depends on a guaranteed and lasting end to the economic and military pressure against Iran and its allies. On February 28th, the US and Israel launched a joint offensive on Iran, killing more than 3,300 people before a 2-week ceasefire was announced on April 8th.
Iran has expressed no interest in participating in any upcoming talks with the United States, despite President Donald Trump sending negotiators to Pakistan on Monday. According to state media, citing anonymous sources, the current atmosphere cannot be assessed as very positive, as the U.S. has yet to lift a blockade on Iran imports as a precondition for the negotiations.
Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman Ismail Baqai said the blockade was a violation of the ceasefire and illegal collective punishment of the Iranian people. In addition to the ongoing U.S. blockade, an American destroyer was reported on Sunday to have opened fire on and seized an Iranian ship. As of today, roads have been closed off with heightened security as Islamabad prepares for the hosting of the second round of U.S.-Iran peace talks. So far, there has only been a single 21-hour negotiating session that ended inconclusively on April 11th.
I'm Michelle Tomato. Thank you for watching and have a good night.